Hey everybody, this is Daniel. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. We got a lot to talk about today. I want to talk about Rayshard Brooks, and I also want to talk about why racism is invisible, particularly to white people. I want to do a little bit of some bite-sized conversations about racism because I think there's a lot of people who are educating themselves in new ways, people who didn't understand the depth and severity of racism and police brutality, and I want to give you some bite-sized nuggets that you can kind of digest, that can sustain you as you educate yourself, as you reflect, and as you have difficult conversations with friends and family. We're going to get to that, but first we got to jump into Rayshard Brooks. So I'm recording this on June 14th. Every day feels long. I'm recording this on June 14th on a Sunday, and so it has been a crazy weekend in Atlanta and throughout the country because of the death of Rayshard Brooks. Now, to be precise, I want to just kind of hit the big points of what happened, and I want to talk about why people's responses to his death are just totally ridiculous, why they're absolutely terrible, and why it speaks to the depth of the problems that we have in America when it comes to police and when it comes to systemic racism. So let's start with what happened to Rayshard Brooks. So Rayshard was in line at Wendy's and he fell asleep. Okay. And I guess the line got backed up as a result of that. And so the police got called out. And so there's video of this on Twitter. You get different angles, which I'm going to talk about later on. You get the initial body cam while the cop is talking to Rayshard. You get an eyewitness angle, and then you get the Wendy's camera angle of what happens at the end. So Rayshard is talking to the police when they arrive. He's asleep in his car. They wake him up. They're talking to him. You can see through the body cam, the cop is asking him how much he drank. Okay. And you see that the cop is trying to get Rayshard to admit that he drank too much. We're going to come to that in a minute. And so then they decide to arrest him based on the breathalyzer and the conversation that they have with him. They go to arrest him. He resists, which you can see in the eyewitness angle. They say that he shot a taser at them. I don't see that in the video. It's hard to see because everything's moving so fast. But those are some reports. And then he runs away. And then the police shoot him in the back as he's running away, and they kill him. So let's break this down into the big parts that need to be discussed. First of all, say it with me, y'all. Why are we calling police on a man asleep in a drive-thru? Why? Why? I don't get it. It makes no sense. He fell asleep in a Wendy's drive-thru and the response was to call the police? There's no violence. He's not harming anyone. I have not read a single report saying he was hurting anybody. This man was asleep. And the response was call the police. This is akin to you're sitting at home watching something on TV and see a little bug crawl on the wall. And you go, oh man, I need to kill that bug. And you go and grab a hammer and you bash it and break your wall. That's what it's akin to when a man falls asleep in the drive-thru at Wendy's in his car and the response is call the police. Y'all, this makes no sense. If you think that that's the proper response, I question you. I question your humanity because the cops only have one tool when they arrive to a job, and it's hammers. The cops are like a set of hammers in a toolbox, but there's no other tools. It's just full of hammers. That's what they do. When they arrive to a situation, most cops are trying to hammer. The culture reinforces it. As I've shared in a previous post, they are conditioned to be okay with killing. That's not my opinion. I heard the police trainer say it himself. The police union protects them. The mayors are scared of them. The lawyers are working with them in different ways. This is wild. There are enough perverse incentives set up for cops to be protected to this point for killing people, no matter the reason. They killed him, and this all started for him being asleep in a Wendy's drive-thru. I just wish I could communicate better how utterly ridiculous that notion is. This is why people want to abolish the police. This is why they want to defund them. They want to build a system where instead of calling the police on something like this, you call a social worker, or you call a city employee, or you call a tow truck driver, and because when you listen to him talk to the police, Rayshard says, just take me home. Why don't we have a system that would have taken Rayshard home? That man wanted to go home. And the police killed him. He was like, I can walk. I'm not that far away from home. And for y'all saying, well, he should get a DUI. Look, I understand the technicalities of all that. I do, trust me. But he was asleep in the car. Like, what are we telling people when we say, oh, okay, if you don't feel like you could drive, like, if you fall asleep in the car and you're black, you might get shot. This just doesn't make any sense. And we don't even have to get to comply or die. Before we even get there, this story don't make no sense, y'all. Calling the police doesn't make sense. Using state violence in this situation just doesn't make sense. And it's incidents like this that just make the abolished police folks, the defund police folks, the demilitarized police folks just look more and more correct every single time. I am not an expert on abolish the police. I'm learning, I'm studying so that I can be more knowledgeable. But I understand enough of the multifaceted approach that they want to have that I go, yeah, the system that I'm hearing activists talk about would have been much better than what we got here. So then let's jump to the next part. In addition to the fact that he asked to be taken home, he's talking to police and the police are trying to put words in his mouth. You don't have to believe me, just watch the video yourself. And the police are trying to put words in his mouth of, hey, you had too much to drink, didn't you? How many drinks did you have? You had too much to drink, didn't you? To which I'm looking at this like, what are y'all actually here for? Are you here to help this man get home safely? Are you here to properly ascertain what's going on right here? Or once you think that the man is drunk, now you just are going to book him. It doesn't matter how close he is to home. It doesn't matter that he was in a drive-thru. You're like, nope, he had too much to drink. Lock him up. Why is that the instant response in our society for a non-violent offense? Y'all, he was in a drive-thru at Wendy's asleep. And y'all, you might be sitting here like, Daniel, okay, you keep saying that over and over again. Because I can't believe it. Why is the response to that death? And so the police decide to arrest him, put his hands behind his back. And if you look at the eyewitness angle, you see him resist the police, which gets it to comply or die. Because I'm seeing a lot of y'all basically say, if you don't do what a cop says, it's okay for that cop to kill you, to end your life at that moment. And y'all are the same people who talk about liberty and justice and patriotism and how much you love Jesus. And I can't help but just marvel at your cognitive dissonance, your complete and utter confusion and ignorance, and your hypocrisy. Because you in other conversations will talk about how much you love God and how much you love your neighbor. And yet you condone the cops being judge, jury, and executioner. How do we live in a just and free society where cops can kill you for not doing what they say? No. Think about what I'm saying now. If you don't do what they say exactly the way they say it, whether it's just or not, y'all are defending cops killing people, killing them, ending their lives. Oh, well, Daniel, he resisted arrest. They shouldn't have called the cops in the first place. This whole thing is wrong. And so he runs from the police, which is its own multifaceted discussion about why black people... You know what? Let me just actually break it down. When I watched him resist the police, I felt that this was a man who said, they're going to kill me. Like, it was fight or flight kicking in. That's what it looked like to me. I'm just going to be honest. And he took off running. Okay? Now, Whether he actually shot a taser at the cops or not, I've read that report, but I also know cops lie. Like when they said that the Buffalo elderly man, he tripped and fell when they shoved him. So I wait for confirmation of some of these details. But even if he did do that, he ran from police. They had his car. They ran his information already before they talked to him. That's just how the cops always do. They had his address. Did they have his keys? If they had all that, why do they need to run and kill this man? They know where he lives. Do you understand how ridiculous this whole situation is? They did not have to shoot the man in the back as he's running away. There is nothing of I feared for my life. He was running away. Yo, let's break it all the way down. How many black people have to die running away from police before y'all get your minds right? Huh? How many black people have to die? How many people have to run away from cops to get shot in the back before people will get their minds right and say, okay, yeah, this is too much? And you see it from the Wendy's angle of the footage. Like he's at a distance and they shoot him in the back and they kill him. And I know a lot of y'all probably looking at that Wendy's on fire and you mad. You saw the highway get blocked and you're mad. Because you're madder at the inconvenience of traffic, you're madder at the property damage of the Wendy's than you are at the black man who was killed because he fell asleep in a drive-thru at Wendy's. I'm just more upset about his death. I just am. And that's without apology. I had a conversation recently, and I was talking about just how difficult these past few weeks have been for me as a black man in America who's aware of all this, been aware his whole life, and just seeing it everywhere. And the person I was talking to, they were like, well, you got to be hopeful, right? Like, you got to have hope. And I said, look. I haven't moved off of my hope. But I just believe there'll be more George Floyds before things get much better. And I just wish it hadn't happened the next day after I said that to them. Before we go, I want to talk a little bit about the invisible nature of racism. Because if you're a white person who's educating yourself more on this subject, you might be saying to yourself, I don't understand how I didn't see this before. I don't understand how I didn't see how bad racism was before. And what I want to tell you is that racism needs you to be blind to it. The only way that racism really survives and thrives in America is when white people are ignorant of it. Because if everyone knew about racism and understood how bad it was and felt it at a deep level in their gut, racism couldn't survive and thrive like it does today. And so in order for it to survive and thrive, racism has to be invisible to the people who can perpetuate it. It's not invisible to the victims. I've been seeing it my whole life. My mom taught me to see it. She was like, I don't want you to be angry about racism. Well, she said, I don't want you to be angry at white people, actually. She said, but I want you to be aware. You've got to be aware of this so that you can survive in America. She told me that as a young man. But if you, white person, whoever you are, could see racism, then it would be that much harder for you to condone it. It would be that much harder. So when you see, for example, what happened to Rayshard Brooks, and you say, well, he should have just complied with the cops. Go look at the AJC and look at the story involving James Hobbs. A man who was police roll up to the place dealing with something. I don't remember the exact details on hand. But the point is that he shoots at the cops. This white man is shooting at cops. Did he die? Nope. Took him into custody. And I've seen multiple videos like this ever since I got on Twitter years ago. It's not the same for everyone. You cannot take your experience of the world and overlay it on everyone else's and say, oh, no, that's how things have been for me, so that must be the way things are for everyone. It's not. That's just not how it works, okay? You haven't seen it because you're thinking that your way of seeing the world is the only way. But I want you to just imagine, just ask yourself, what if black people are right about racism? What if they're right about how bad it is? What if it's still a problem? And if you're willing to just entertain that, you will be surprised at how much you learn. And it will hurt. You'll feel super uncomfortable with just how much it's everywhere. But that's the point of racism. It has to be invisible to the people who can perpetuate it so that it continues on to survive and thrive in American society. And if you think that's a doozy, wait till you see just how pervasive it is in American society. But that's another talk for another time. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this information was useful. Reach out to me anytime. I'm on Facebook, Daniel Troutman. I'm on Instagram, The Daniel Troutman. I'm on Twitter, DB Troutman, B as in boy. And you can also visit my website, danieltroutman.com, like the fish. I'm also on YouTube if you want to see the videos there as well. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a good day.